All right, everybody, we are live. While YouTube pings people, let's listen to some music and then we'll get started. Okay, so hello, everybody. Welcome back to Archaeology with Flint Dibble. And I am here with my friend, Dr. Marijke Stoll. And
Hi, everybody.
this is what I think your fourth time on this channel.
My fourth appearance, yeah.
I think you have the record now for the most appearances on here.
Nice. That's awesome.
I think you beat out Dan Fallu now by one.
Yeah.
So
take that, Dan.
Yeah, Dan, if you're watching, take that. He just got married, actually. Congratulations to Dan Fallu for getting married recently. I wish I was not ill, or I would have gone there and actually have been the best man, but I could not make it. So it is what it is. We are here to chat about the Aztecs and some Maya stuff and sort of debunk some misconceptions and look at what's true and what's not within some of our modern ideas on them. We're going to stay away from Atlantis because I should be having Curly Tlapoyawa on the channel soon. So that'll round out this kind of Mesoamerican adventure in some ways, though I hope to do more of it later. We were going to start off and chat, I guess, about misconceptions about human sacrifice. This is something that I think everybody knows about the Aztecs in particular, is we think of them like this. And I imagine we should nuance this a bit. So tell me, Marijke, what's the worst misconceptions about sacrifice you've heard?
Well, let's actually start with a question that was asked the last time we were here. Or let me actually back up a bit, because this has actually become a big discourse on Twitter lately, especially as Warner Brothers is releasing an Aztec Batman cartoon. And so, you have your usual bunch like Matt Walsh and other conservative commentators saying, oh, the Aztecs were the most bloodiest empire in the world. They were terrible. They sacrificed children and blah, 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 all these things, right? And yeah, some of that is true, and some of it actually, there are a lot of misconceptions about it. And one of the questions that we were asked when I was on last time was, did they really water the crops with blood during droughts? And, the person didn't specify the they that they were referring to, but we're going to assume it's the Aztecs, because obviously, they were the one, it was their sacrifices that the Spanish witnessed, right? And so it's really them that come to mind when we think about human sacrifice in Mesoamerica. And so I started to break it down. When we're talking about the Aztecs, we're actually referring to the Triple Alliance that includes two other cities. The Tenochtitlan was the city of the Mexica. So when we think a lot about that picture you showed of the heart being torn out on the Templo Mayor, that's actually the Mexica. So that's one misconception to start, is that Aztec actually refers to the Triple Alliance. And then when we think about this question, like, did they really water their crops with blood? It kind of falls apart when you apply just a little bit of logic. Blood's not going to soak into the soil. It's going to ruin your crops. These guys were intensive agriculturists.
Yeah, they like their corn.
They know that you can't water crops with blood.
Wait, isn't that why their corn was red? Isn't that why their corn was red? Their maize was red?
Right, yeah. Right, maybe. But they also had what was called a chinampa system, which is a series like the raised beds in Lake Xochimilco. And these actually exist today. And they're just this amazing agricultural innovation that could produce crops like 4 times a year. And they're actually still in use to this day. So a drought wouldn't have been so much of a problem. And then, so you got to ask, like, why ask this question in the first place? Where would this idea have come from? And there actually was a practice, and this was like a fairly common practice throughout Mesoamerica, which was to cut your ears, right? Or make cuts on your arm, and then you flick the blood to the 4 corners.
Okay.
Right? The 4 sacred corners, 4 directions. You would do that in your house.
This almost like reminds me of like doing the cross that Catholics do.
Exactly, right? And they'd also do it in their fields as well, right? So that may be where that idea comes from. So they weren't like watering the crops with blood in times of drought, but there would have been a practice of flicking the blood in the corners of the milpa, or the agricultural field. So that's where that would have come from. But the thing I think also is interesting about this question to me is that, again, going back to this current discourse about like Aztec Batman, right? And the indigenous were evil because they.
So why Batman? Sacrifice. Explain that to me.
It's Warner Brothers cartoon.
Okay.
And Aztec Batman, from what I've seen of the trailer, I haven't watched it yet, but what I've seen of the trailer is that there's a Mexican
it is like a real thing. All right.
Who becomes Batman, right? And which makes a lot of sense because bats or murciélagos are actually a popular animal in a lot of Mesoamerican imagery. Bats, crocodiles, jaguars, snakes, stuff like that. And so Aztec Batman is fighting against the conquistadors. And it's really upsetting people because they want to see the conquistadors as the good guys and the Aztecs as the terrible people. And a lot of it goes back to, they sacrificed children. They sacrificed human beings. They're evil, right? And then, from there, especially, and Matt Walsh likes to say this a lot, but from there is the idea that it was good to conquer them. Colonization was okay, that what we did, like maybe we did bad things to the indigenous folks, but in the end it was good because they practiced human sacrifice and therefore are evil.
Okay, yeah, right? I see that on Twitter a lot and elsewhere, that the Aztecs are evil for practicing human sacrifice.
Because they practice sacrifice. And there is a lot of exaggeration about it within the Spanish accounts too, but even by the Mexica themselves, they exaggerate as well how many people they sacrifice. And I think also, if you're going to understand sacrifice in the American tradition, the Aztecs did kind of take it to an extreme, right? They did. There also are, like, to be honest, some gross parts of it. Like, there is the festival of Xipe-Totec, who is a god that represents like the newly growing corn emerging out of its seed. And one of the things that the Aztecs would do is after capturing warriors in a battlefield, they would take them back and then they would skin them. And then for a month, the Mexica warriors would run around in these decaying skins representing the newly growing corn. So yes, that's gross.
I don't know. That could be pretty comfortable if you dry it out like leather. It's like wearing like a leather jacket, right?
True. Yeah. And
you just need to make sure you're wearing the skin of someone bigger than you. Otherwise, it's going to be quite tight.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, it was gross. Yeah, it was gross stuff sometimes. The majority of sacrifice was honestly auto-sacrifice, right? Just cutting your ears and flicking the blood. There's also the Zompantli, right? So the Aztecs did kind of take it to an extreme. But here's, so I see in the comments saying the gods wanted blood, the elite sacrificed poor people. That is bad. That is, again, a myth. That's false. That is not true at all. Wicked Felina. The majority of people who were sacrificed, so what they had was what they called flowery wars, where they would go and battle against people, and the point of them was to capture warriors, right? And they would be taken back and sacrificed. And then they're often called sometimes like butterflies, right? Yeah, so this is a moche example, but it's the same idea. And a lot of times the warriors were actually elites themselves. So they weren't sacrificing poor people. And the idea that they're always sacrificing virgins is also a myth too. And in fact, that's a myth that comes up a lot about the cenote in Chichen Itza. And that was what the story was. Oh, they're sacrificing virgins. But then when we went and actually did analysis of the skeletons, we found out that they're young boys, usually with particular pathologies, right? And that sometimes they're cousins or they're brothers, right? So, and then if you're thinking about it, if your child is chosen as a sacrifice, right, for Tlaloc to bring the rains, right, then that's actually an honor. No, the Maya did not sacrifice virgins, wicked Felina. Just stop. Everything you're saying is absolutely wrong.
You don't have to reply to every single comment, right?
I know. It's just I keep seeing her, and she just keeps saying, "Oh, blah, blah, blah." No. It's like.
I mean, that's the point. Is we're trying to debunk these misconceptions here. That this was not just a wanton act where everybody was sacrificed.
Exactly.
And B, it's actually oftentimes the elite warriors who were captured who were then sacrificed. Yeah.
Yeah, and then even when we're talking about like the child sacrifices that would happen, so those were mostly children, obviously, but it was always done for Tlaloc, who was the rain god, and usually it took place in specific locations on the landscape at specific temples. And that's actually a chokmul. So when they would sacrifice the warrior, his heart would be put in that bowl on his chest, right? And so, yeah, but these children, like I said, they oftentimes had particular pathologies, right? That we can actually see in the skeletons. And I can't recall exactly what they are now, but these children were chosen for a reason. And then again, it's kind of like an honor for that family. Because the way sort of the sacrifice is, the way sacrifice kind of works in the Americas is the gods feed us, so we feed them, right? So you got to understand it from that perspective, that the violence is generative. We consume to reproduce. And in fact, the Mexica referred to human beings as like tortillas for the gods.
Human beings were tortillas for the gods. That's lovely.
Yeah, and then also a lot of sacrifice. So you have that image of Lady Jia pulling a rope through her tongue. And
wait, which one was this? This is the auto-sacrifice one?
Yeah, the auto-sacrifice one, yeah.
So these are examples of people harming themselves as part of a ritual.
Exactly. So what Lady Jia is doing is she's pulling a rope through a hole in her tongue, and this rope has thorns. And then the blood is going to drop onto, there's a book at the bottom of there. It's going to drop onto there, and then what they're going to do is they're going to burn that paper. And then like the smoke is going to go up and stuff like that. And so as an elite, you're often at times required to do a lot of auto-sacrifice. And you also, as an elite, you ran the risk of being, well, not the risk, but you knew you ran the risk of being captured in war and sacrificed too. The men would take that same thorn and pull it through their foreskin.
That sounds really fun, actually. That's a real sacrifice for a guy.
Exactly, right? Yes, exactly. But again, it's about generative violence, blood, semen, for crops, for the continuation of society, right? Again, we feed the gods because the gods feed us. It's
that's this depiction here.
Yes. So here we have a god. He is piercing his penis, and the blood is going on to a representation of corn. And this is from a panel at the ball court in El Tajín.
So this is a good example of them watering the crops with blood.
Yeah, exactly.
And a little more than blood, but semen as well, and the other sorts of fluids that would come out, urine probably if you're going to pierce the penis. Yeah.
So again, it's about this like reciprocal obligation, right? The gods provide us with the food that we need, so occasionally we need to feed them as well. A lot of times that was accomplished through just auto-sacrifice. Sometimes it was accomplished through actual human sacrifice. And then I think one of the things I really want to get at, because I see everyone's like, oh my God, this is so terrible. I want to get back to this idea of framing, right? How we look at things and how we've been sort of propagandized to view human sacrifice in the Americas. Because while this is going on, let's say in the Mexica, what's going on in Spain? The Inquisition, right? They are tying people down to racks, cutting them open, taking out their small intestines slowly in order to force them to confess that they were like secret Jews, right? They were burning people at the stake alive, and everybody came to watch. They would hang people or behead people, and the people watching, right, would go in there and take ears, fingers, body parts. That was happening, and stuff like that was happening even in America during a lot of lynchings, right? And in the South, they oftentimes would cut off the penis, cut off the balls, cut off fingers, cut off ears, and take those home. And that was happening in the 1930s, the 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s in the American South.
Right now, in places like Gaza and Ukraine, with the Ukraine war, tons of the social media was blown up with violence and torture. And so, this kind of stuff is happening all over the world right now, and in places like the US and Mexico and elsewhere as well. This is happening.
Yeah. I mean, a popular form of killing someone was drawing and quartering them and then leaving their head on the outside of town. I once went to a medieval torture museum, and they had this device that was shaped like a trumpet that they would, if you were a bad musician, they would put this on your hands, and then they would tighten them, basically breaking your fingers. And that was just punishment for being a bad musician. So in each case, right?
I play the trumpet. Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah, right. So in each case, in the Americas and in Europe, we have this case of state violence being visited upon the human body, right? But in the Americas, it's about feeding our gods because they feed us, and in Europe, it's about punishment, right?
It's a different conception.
Again, and even then, let's break down Christianity. What is Christianity based on but like the ultimate human sacrifice, which is Jesus, right? Jesus died for our sins. He was sacrificed. In the Old Testament is just full of God telling the Israelites, like, go and massacre those people, genocide them, spear the babies.
I mean, this is common in most cultures. So, for example, we think about gladiator games. So, in the Roman amphitheater, right? So, in the Colosseum. So, when you have two marquee gladiators fighting, how often do you think one of them dies?
Exactly.
Well, no, I'm asking you, Marijke. Marijke, I'm testing you. 1 second.
Pretty much every time. No, like it was often.
No, not at all.
Oh no, really? Oh,
it's the opposite. That most gladiators, so much investment was put into them, into training them to become elite athletes, that very rarely during a gladiator contest, like the types we see in our movies, did someone die.
Oh wow.
On the other hand,
so that's a misconception too.
That's a misconception. But on the other hand, there's the lunchtime show in the Colosseum, and what that is the Roman prisoners and convicts were literally just tied to stakes, and somebody would walk down and slit their throats for the amusement and entertainment of the crowd to watch them all die. So that's the kind of bloodshed and torture that you see in the arena, or tie people up and let animals loose on them. Again, that didn't happen with the elite gladiators that were trained. That happened with prisoners.
Yeah, and so no, we're not saying, so yes, it happens in most cultures. So no, we're not saying it's okay. It happens, but you know, it's just how do we frame it, right? Because again, the even Bill Maher said it recently. Oh, you know, what we did to the indigenous was bad, but you have to understand they were constantly warring with each other.
Sorry, wait, you froze in a second. Marijke, you froze for a second. Wait a second. Your internet is lagging quite bad. Uh-oh. So first off,
yeah,
nobody comes to my channel and tells my guests what their expertise are. Okay, Kujian? If somebody ever tells me what to do with my guests, I'm immediately blocking you. This is the last warning that I will ever give on this. You do not tell me what to tell my expert guests about their expertise. So that's one thing to get done while Marijke is still lagging. You are still lagging quite bad, Marijke.
yeah, sorry.
Marijke, by the way, is down in Oaxaca, which is partly why the internet connection is not so great. Part of our goal was to try to do live from the field. So she's going to talk about some of her research down there as well in a second. Let's see. She's back. You seem to be doing a little better.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, sorry. This Kujian guy is being blocked. All right, there we go.
Duh, typical white-hating liberal professors.
People are nuts. I swear to God, like you are speaking to your expertise and they're like, no, we're not. Oh my God, how are we hating anybody? We're not hating white people. We're trying to explain that cultures all over the world do these evil things. And that includes the Aztecs, but it also includes white Europeans. So therefore, not one is worse or better than the others. They both did nasty shit. That's our point here, you people that don't get this. It's quite simple.
And as far as my expertise goes, I wrote my master's thesis on Aztec, on a human sacrifice, like Tenochca Mexica. So this is my area of expertise, actually. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course it is. That's why you're here, Marijke.
Yeah, and so like, yeah, that's just all the point I'm trying to make with this idea of framing, right? Is that we look at the indigenous and the practice of human sacrifice that they did, and we're like, oh my God, they deserve to be conquered for what they did. They're evil, nasty people. But then you look at what the Europeans were doing at the same time, and it's just like, okay, there's just as much violence there. Yeah. Right? So if we would have to apply the logic, well, then Europe deserves to be conquered too for that reason, you know? And so
and that's exactly the point. Going back to that Aztec Batman that you were bringing up, people were upset because they were saying, why would you portray the Aztecs as heroes? They do human sacrifice. And it's like, why would you portray the white people as heroes? They're killing and murdering people as well. So I guess nobody's the hero, but stories need a hero. So it's okay to have some stories with some groups of people as heroes and then other stories where the opposite group are heroes. That's human nature.
Yeah, and then again, like the Mexica did take it kind of to an extreme.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why that's why a lot of indigenous groups, like, they didn't like being under the yoke of their empire, and they also were just like, yeah, those guys are kind of crazy. So
I mean, that I think is one of the myths. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I am not a historian or scholar of this region, but you know, so one of the biggest myths I think that's out there is that Cortez conquered the Aztecs with just a handful of soldiers, when in reality it was a rebellion against the rulers of this Triple Alliance by the people that were oppressed.
Yeah, it was basically like Cortez and his like 40,000 to 80,000 indigenous allies, right? So and it's kind of you know, and so like one of the groups that I work with today, the Zapotecs, they also like their enemies were the Aztecs. So well, they did also align themselves with the Spanish, to defeat the Aztecs, because the Aztecs had just come through and tried to conquer Tehuantepec just a couple years before the arrival of the Spanish. So what's happening is, like, the Spanish happened to enter into just a complicated political situation when they arrived. And when you look at like a lot of the things that they also did after the conquest, they, you know, wasn't really great either. Like, the violence continued in many different ways. They enslaved people. They raped women. They worked people to death. Diseases spread. Many indigenous peoples died. And I think also like an interesting story too. This is South America, but the last Incan emperor, whose name I forget, right? The Spanish killed him by pouring hot molten gold down his throat.
Huh, that's actually a typical Roman torture for runaway slaves.
Yeah.
To pour hot molten metal down somebody's throat.
Yeah. So again, it's just like societies were violent at that time. You know?
Yeah. Well, and they still are, as I want to point out.
And they still are. Yeah, they still are. So we don't want to like use like cultural practice as sort of like any reason to say like, oh, like these people deserved what they got. Yeah. And that's sort of like, yeah, and then that's been sort of like the big perspective you know, the part of the discourse on Twitter is like, oh, they're the worst empire alive, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, have you guys ever heard of the rape of Nanking? Did you ever hear what the Japanese have done?
I mean, I don't understand how you rank these anyway. They're all doing terrible things. Humans, somebody I think I saw in the chat, humans do terrible things. And yeah, that's the point. We can't just go ahead and start ranking and nobody deserves to have something terrible done to them because the elites in their society did something terrible. You know, like that is the people that they are oppressed by did something terrible. So therefore violence should be done to everybody in a society is just one of the worst things that I could think of to have happen. And we see that happening today. We see that happening in the past and continuing to be justified. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So wait, I see, before we move on beyond sacrifice, I see a relevant question, which is, since blood was so important to the Mexica, was menstrual blood also important to them?
You know, honestly, that's not a topic that's studied as much. And that's actually very interesting. I don't know. Obviously, that's something the Spanish would never have been able to ask about because, you know, it's mostly men and chroniclers, and they would never have asked women about what they did with their menstrual blood. I'm assuming that probably like any cloths with blood on it would have been burned.
Okay.
Yeah, sort of like how they would drip blood on the paper and burn that.
Burn it up. So is that the same concept as with Greek sacrifice, where you burn it so the smoke goes to the gods, or is it something different?
It is kind of like that, like the smoke, the blood, and the smoke. So there is kind of that similarity, that like burning something. Sometimes they would also just burn paper too, even without blood on it. So yeah, it is kind of that idea that the smoke is going up. So, and a lot of times they would also eat the gods, but those were usually like amaranth dough representations of the gods, and though they would do that. I know there's like sometimes like, oh, they were cannibals. And the accounts of cannibalism are greatly exaggerated. It did happen during a particular festival, and they made kind of pozole with it, which is pozole is kind of like a stew kind of thing.
Okay.
And it was consumed by the warriors, but it wasn't like something they did all the time. In fact, there was a really hilarious debate that happened in the 70s between Marvin Harris and Marshall Solins. And Marvin Harris said, oh, maybe the Aztecs did cannibalism because like there wasn't enough proteins in their diet. And then it became this kind of whole debate back and forth. And Marshall Solins was breaking down like, oh, how much meat could you actually get out of a human thigh and buttocks? You know,
a lot. To be honest, we're big mammals.
But like the thing is like if you're doing that, you're gonna burn through your most important like resource, which is human labor, right? Like this is a society without big, large domesticated animals. So you know, a lot of stuff is accomplished simply by human labor. You don't want to burn through all of that. And also, what Marvin Harrison recognized at the time was that there are a lot of sources of protein within the Mesoamerican diet that's coming from like other resources, like not just animals, but also plants.
Yeah, beans, of course.
So there was so again, the cannibalism did occur, but it was always within the context of like a ritual or a festival, and never as something that was like, oh, a part of everyday life.
So I guess with the exception of children, it seems like most of the people that are sacrificed had some level of agency, in the sense that it was either auto-sacrifice, you're stabbing yourself or your tongue or your eye or whatever, or it was warriors who were captured and who knew that when they went to battle that this was a potential outcome, just like when you go to battle, you could die in battle. This is going to be a
exactly.
potential outcome as
You know what's
well.
gonna, yeah, you know what outcome gonna happen if you're going into it. Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. So with the exception of children, it actually seems like there's a certain level of acceptance and agency for most of the individuals that are sacrificed, where the children, I mean, I know this doesn't matter. They're children. They don't have the same level of consent and stuff like that, at least by our standards. Were the children that were sacrificed mostly from elite families, or were they from anyone, or how were they chosen? Do you know?
That I'm not sure of, but we know from from the DNA analysis from the people from the bodies that we found in the cenote, it was familial. So they were selecting from certain families.
Okay.
Because like they were cousins or they were related, right? Sacrificed years apart, but they're from families. And like I said earlier, I don't recall what exact pathologies, but these kids had certain like obvious skeletal pathologies, right? So they're not just like picking any random child. It's children that fit certain characteristics. Probably were deformed or had some other kind of pathology in a different way. And they were always coming from the same families. And it probably would have been seen as an honor because you are being chosen to be sacrificed for Tlaloc and Tlaloc. And then because of that, your sacrifice, the rains are going to come and feed the crops and feed the people. So again, it's just framing. It's a different way of understanding this.
It's about understanding the context within which these practices took place. I got you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay. So the second thing we wanted to, let me make sure there was no questions that I pinned that related to sacrifice. No, we can leave some of these other questions towards the end. So the second thing we wanted to move on to was the ball game, because that's one of your major research topics for your PhD and otherwise. And so this is a good kind of linking image. Or were there any other images from the sacrifice section that you wanted to talk about in depth? I meant to ask you before.
No, this is a good place to start.
Okay, so let's go with this one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is again, this is a ball player who's probably been sacrificed, right? Obviously, his head's been decapitated, and the snake's coming out of his head. This is how Mesoamerican artists represented blood spurting out. And so this decapitation ritual was part of sort of like a suite of images and practices associated with the classic period. So from like 250 to about 800, 900 CE or AD if you prefer. Sort of this classic period ball game practice that was all over the Gulf Coast in Veracruz. And it was probably a particular style of playing the game, and it was often accompanied by a decapitation practice. Now, who exactly was decapitated, we're not sure. Like, there's this kind of idea that goes around that in the ball game, the losers were already sacrificed. And like, that was not true, because like, obviously you'd run out of players at some point, right?
But it's like those Roman gladiators. You can't afford to kill all your elite players that have been training for a decade.
Exactly. And like, ball players, that was a serious vocation, right? Ball players sometimes actually went around and to different sites to play games. It's something that you started training in as a child. And then also, like, it was a great way for like social mobility, right? Because if you're a very strong player, people are placing bets during the games. Like, betting is an important part of ball game practice. Even today, like, if you want to play like pelota mixteca or mixtec ball, you actually have to like place a bet. Right. So it's also kind of a way of like social mobility too, because if you won all your bets, obviously then you become like richer. And then I think, as we talked about last time with the ball game, it's going to take place in different contexts. So you have everything from, your pickup games between like people just playing and having fun, to all the way up to your elite games that are being played in like the ceremonial centers, where it's like all the elites are attending, and it's representing like a cosmic battle on the playing field, right? So just like we have like casual pickup games of baseball, all the way up to the major league, have the Olympics. This is how ball games could vary as well in context. So if we look at sort of like classic period Maya ball games and warfare, what they would do is they would go outside of the cities, they would fight against each other, and then the point was to capture the other lord. And then if you did capture that lord, he would be taken back to the victor's city, where oftentimes he would be tortured, forced to play a mock ball game, where he would lose, because it's a mock ball game to make sure he loses. And then they would sacrifice him. But it was always the Lord, right?
So it's not the entire team, it's the one individual who was the sponsor for the team, in a sense.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, so I think that's where that kind of
You're breaking up again, Marijke. 1 second. Internet difficulties. Oaxaca, what's up with your internet? Let's see. Do you want to try to rejoin again? Maybe that worked last time. Wait. Yeah. Wait. All right. So yeah. So when we're thinking about this ball game, I saw that somebody mentioned Belize is bringing back the ball game. That's pretty cool. We have some videos that Marijke shared that we can show some of the videos as well.
There we go.
Okay, we're back.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Sorry about that. It's Oaxaca internet is still a little lags behind.
Do you want me to show one of the videos that you sent me? So we can get a sense of what this ball game and how it's played and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I, as part of my thesis, like trying to like re-examine like Mesoamerican ball games and what role they played in in societies, right, and in communities. I also, yes, internet got sacrificed in Oaxaca. Very true. I actually did an ethnography working with modern ball game players. So in Oaxaca, they play pelota mixteca de hule, which is Mixtec rubber ball.
Okay.
And they use these huge, heavy gloves. And so we're going to show a video right now. I think if you show like number one.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, so as you can see, so this is happening during a tournament. And so there's actually like two teams or like two sets of teams playing at the same time. You'll have your sake, which is one team of 5. They serve the ball. And then you have your other team, which is the contrarresto, and they respond. And so the sake will hit the ball against what's called the botador, which is an inclined stone. He'll launch it. And then what they'll do is they use those gloves to hit it back. If the ball bounces or go out of bounds, then you kind of see those guys with the sticks. Yeah, so those are called the chaceros. They're referees. But what they do is like they keep score, but they'll also draw a line. And what that does is that it narrows the playing field. So like the space they have in which to return the ball gets narrower and narrower.
So basically they need to return it within that square where they're standing, and then they have to hit it back and forth until someone either gets it out of bounds or bounces, gets it out of the square, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. And so so what they mark that with is rayas. And if there's so many rayas, then the teams switch places. Like it was like even sometimes some of the guys are like, I don't play it, I don't understand the rules. But you have to win 3 sets out of 5. And it's like you go 15, 30, 40, and then it's a set. And then when I went down the last time I went to a ball game, they told me that, oh, you can also lose points too. I was like, what? I did not realize you could also lose points. So there may be different rule systems. Like this was on the coast, and I was mostly with people in the Central Valleys and up north in Mixteca Alta. But yeah, basically it's sort of kind of like a fight over territory, which gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you draw these rayas or these lines.
It reminds me of
volleyball. And then yeah, it's like volleyball tennis in a way.
But like without a net, and then of course they're slowly changing the size of the playing field in order to make it so that it eventually goes out.
Yeah. So then it gets like a lot tougher to return the ball because these balls like can get launched very far, like something like 80 meters.
Okay, yeah, that's quite far.
If you're like a really good player.
80 meters, by the way, is like 200 plus feet, 250 feet for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they usually this is really interesting because what they usually do is they have like pickup games on Sunday where anyone can show up, you place your bet, and you form a team and you play. It's more casual. But then they also have tournaments where teams from a bunch of different villages will come, and then they'll usually for what we call a fiesta patronal, which is like a party to celebrate the saint who the village is named after. And they'll invite people from all over to come and play, and it's usually like other villages, right? So you'll see like a tournament scoring card, right? It'll be like Guadalupe Etla versus San Felipe, and then San Felipe wins, and they'll go against the other person who won from like the other like round. It's like round robin, right? And then there's usually a prize at the end of it.
Okay.
So it's
and the prize today is still sacrificing the Lord, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, it's money. But it's, and then there's this whole again, reciprocal obligation. If you are the host team and you invite someone to play, you are expected to feed your guests. You're supposed to host them, feed them, and then you expect that they will invite you to play against in their community, right? So hosts and guests take turns playing games against each other. If you are a team and you accept the invitation but then don't show up, you lose what's called your calidad moral, your moral quality. And then people may end up refusing to accept your invitations to play because why should we go play against someone who's not going to show up?
Yeah.
And they oftentimes will actually take pre-bets in order to guarantee that the other team shows up. So a lot of what came out of my discussions with the players is this idea of amor con amor se paga. You pay love with love. Si me das, te doy. If you give to me, I give to you. And it's about this. And then there's the Zapotec term guelaguetza, which again is about this reciprocal obligations, right? Or obligated reciprocity. And it's a kind of a way. It's a moral framework that in which you can sort of understand why sacrifice occurs, especially if it's from this understanding of we feed the gods and the gods feed us, and then also just how the ball game could go from be adopted by elites as a political legitimation, while also at the same time being this very much a social event where people can come together, build friendships. Something that the guys told me is that they play because it helps build amistades, it helps build friendships. And also in a lot of ways, if you look at these tournament games that are happening, all these teams and people coming to this festival to celebrate and watch the games is also a way for people who oftentimes live in isolated villages, because Oaxaca is very mountainous, right? To come together, exchange marriage partners, and build friendships, right? So it's really about community integration, and also as part of this community integration, it's also a way to resolve conflicts, right? It's also a stand-in for war. So again, kind of to contrast the European case where there's war for annihilation and to take over resources and stuff. I think, you know, in the American case, like, yes, there was warfare. Yes, they did. Commit violence against each other. There was conflict. But they also, yeah, the gameplay oftentimes was also used as a way to avoid resolve conflicts, right? And we also see this a lot among ball games that were played by indigenous in North America, like the stickball games. Like ethnographies of that describe how these games, like, not only were sometimes like performed for good weather, good rain, for like as medicine, but also times, yeah, there was also a way to resolve standing conflicts between tribes. Because, like, you know, especially like these are small groups of people, especially in the North America, right? These are, you know, if you lose warriors in conflicts and in battles, like that actually that's not really good for your community, right? You need, because you also need these people as hunters and protectors, and you know, they're important parts of your society. So it's kind of a way to reduce like losing so many people. But, you know, people could still die and be injured. They were violent games.
Yeah.
Especially if you were mad at some.
It reminds me kind of like, you know, instead of fighting a war, let's have our two lords duel to the death. Except in this case, you're actually fielding a whole team, and in the end, the lord still dies. It's just a matter of, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And then and so like this is also a way to avoid like really bad conflict between even like communities on the smaller scale. And like even to like not so much today, but yeah, back in the past, like the guys told me, it was like, yeah, sometimes village leaders would set up games if there was if there was conflicts between people, and they would be like, okay, play it out, and then whoever wins, you know, then you guys just have to shut up about it.
So yeah, I pulled up a comment earlier about whether it reduces tensions. So in this case, that is an example of reducing tensions. What about, do we see friendships between villages, like merging together to form a team, or is it just teams by village?
So mostly, like when it's the tournaments stuff, it is going to be by village.
Okay.
Each village will field a team, but like on those pickup, like when there's those casual games on Sundays, like a lot of times those guys just showing up from wherever, and so you would have people from like different towns and stuff playing. So in those cases, yeah, it could be anybody. But what was kind of really interesting about it, and it shows up in the ethnography from North America, and it also shows up here too, is that even though they're all friends with each other, most of them only know each other by nicknames. So some of the nicknames were like El Diablo, El Campeón, like the devil, El Campeón. This hat was gifted to me by a ball player because his nickname was No Gano, which means I don't win.
Okay.
And then and then the little.
So he's been sacrificed several times then.
Yes, right. And underneath it says, "Pero como me divierto." He's like, I never win, but how much fun I have. And so like sometimes when I would go there to watch the games, I would like say, oh, hey, where's El Caballero? Where's Lento? Well, if I asked for their like formal name, they would be like, who? And then I would say, oh, wait, where's Lento? And they're like, oh, yeah, he's over here, or he's coming. And am I lagging again? Oh, yeah. And then
you're okay.
There was, okay. And then like for a while there was a guy I heard of called El Culebra. And I always heard rumors about El Culebra. This is when I was doing my research, like in early 2000s. And then in 2018, I was down on the coast and I actually met El Culebra. And I was just like, oh my God, I've heard so much. You're famous. I've heard so much about you. But it's like they know each other by nicknames, which is really interesting. And in fact, in the ethnography from the 1800s, certain like names like owl or eagle would be given to the best players.
Huh.
So there is this like tradition of nicknames for ball players, which I think is still fascinating that it continues to this day. So as you can see, like they're hitting that ball back and forth. And you can see how, and then there it goes out of bounds. Like, so that ball is a vulcanized rubber ball and it weighs about a kilo. So that's 2.25 pounds. And when it's flying through the air, it can actually be very dangerous. They're in between. When I was doing my ethnography, one of the players had actually gotten hit in the face with a ball and broke his jaw. Yeah, so it's still kind of like you could still get injured on these sports. And in fact, I think so these guys, these are two brothers. They're called Las Ranas, the frogs. And yeah, you can see that's where he got hit by the ball. And let me take a sip of water.
Yeah.
There's also a picture of the gloves that they wear.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those gloves, they usually weigh
about
between 7 to 8 kilograms. So like you're getting like 16 pounds, right? And each one is specially made for the player. They're made of 30 layers of hide, and then the nails are put in there they'll hold it together, but also to give like more bounce to the ball. And then they're very brightly painted, right? So sometimes what happens, like especially to the old players, is that their hands become like this from the repeated strikes. Right, and I think there's also another picture I gave you of sort of the evolution of the glove. So this is really interesting. We suspect that there was always, So this is at the glove maker's house. And you can kind of see how they experimented over the years. So what they used to play was something called pilota mixteca a mano fria, which is just where you're hitting the ball with your hand. And actually, there's good evidence that there was handball games even during pre-Hispanic times. And then one day, the glove maker's grandfather had a cut on his hand. He covered it with leather, and then he noticed like he could hit the ball farther with this sort of leather over his hand. And so you could see like they're experimenting and how like they keep adding layers, and then they add nails, and then they add more layers, and then they add nails, and that's how you get to the sort of massive glove today.
That is totally crazy. So somebody also asked if I've lost the comment, but I think it was asking about if the balls they're using today match the examples of balls we have archaeologically.
Well, I think the big difference is that the rubber is vulcanized, which would not have been a process available to, obviously, to the pre-Hispanic Mesoamericans. But yeah, they are very similar. So there's a couple different kind of balls that they could have used. Obviously, the rubber ones would have been very precious, but that's only coming from one source. So you kind of have to be a top ball team to like be able to get those, or you'd have to be elites to get those because those are very valuable trade items. But you could also use deer hide stuffed with grass. And there is also a game that's played today in Michoacan, Purepeche or something like that. And what they do is they take maguey fibers, soak it in oil, light it on fire, and then use these big batons to like hit it back and forth, like kind of like hockey.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, rubber would have been like sort of like the more prestige type of ball, but they also did have like other ways of like creating balls.
So in a sense, there was this comment before about there's a lot of changes over time. There's a lot of different versions of this between different regions, even in the past. And so it's a very fluid sort of thing with rules and traditions changing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think when we think about the Mesoamerican ball game, we often think of the hip game. And yeah, that was probably like the game that was probably played like more for the more like ritually and ritually intense games that were occurring in elite spaces. But there's a mural from Teotihuacan that actually shows several different types of ball games, like some with like using kind of rackets. There's some where like you don't use your hip, you only use your forearm. There's handball games, and then there's even something like akin to soccer. So yeah, there are sort of a variety of ball games exactly this one right here, yeah. So you can see like one where he's kicking it. So there would have been a variety of ball games that would have been popular at different times. And then, there's also sort of like changes in rule systems, right? Because, there's the way you play in an open court that just has like mounds on the side is going to be different from the way you play in a court that's like enclosed in an I shape, where you actually have like these terminal alleys that were also like spaces in which to play. And you also like there would have been some differences like based on the angles of the aprons of the mounds on the inside, right? Because as you can see here, like this is El Tajín. That apron is very, very flat. And so the way the ball is going to hit against it is going to be very different if the wall is very straight. Or so even like the angles of the aprons would have affected the speed and trajectory of the ball.
Huh. Very interesting.
And so we do see like regional preferences. So in Veracruz and in the Maya region, that's where you kind of have these really like almost horizontal aprons on the inside. In the central valleys in Oaxaca, a lot of those aprons are stepped, right? So that again would have changed how people played the game. So yeah, it's a really long tradition, like 3,000-year-old sport that changed a lot, but still is played to this day. There's at least like 10 different varieties of modern ball games played in Oaxaca today. Yeah, so this is the court at Monte Alban, and as you can see, those aprons are stepped. And this is something we only see in Oaxaca.
Interesting. So it's just going to create a little more variability to the bounces and stuff like that. Did you hear me? It's going to create a little variability to the bounce. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Let's see. We have a couple more questions about sports in general, or maybe just one. Maybe not 100% on topic, but did the Aztec have any combat sports like wrestling? Or do we only have evidence of these ball or team sports?
Yes, actually, wrestling and boxing were also very popular, like combat sports in the Americas. And in fact, during one festival, so every month in the calendar there was a different festival in the Mexica calendar, right? And so in one of those months, they actually did have like combat sports, but a lot of times these were mock sports, where the warrior to be sacrificed would be given like paper weapons and be forced to like fight or like wrestle or like fight or box against like someone with real weapons. But also like we do see this like we see this a lot in Western Mexico. You'll see like warriors like dressed up as jaguars, like boxing each other. And in fact, I think in Guerrero, the state of Guerrero, they actually still have a tradition where people dress up with jaguar masks and like box each other. And even though like, there's not so much traditional like indigenous sports like being, at these fiesta patronales, right? These celebrations of the town's patron saint. Basketball tournaments, soccer tournaments, and even races are an important part of the festivities. So even though the sports have changed, games and sports are still an important part of these festivals, these sort of these traditional like celebrations of village celebrations. So we see this like continuation of sports being an important part of like community integration. And in fact, there's a town called San Jose de Pacifico, which is like 9,000 feet above sea level, and they have a basketball tournament every year. And sometimes American basketball players will come down and participate in the tournament because you're playing basketball at high elevation, which really forces you to like work and exercise, and they use that as kind of training and conditioning.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we have questions keep coming in. So the first one I think I saw was, did the ball players wear uniforms or paints to distinguish different teams?
They probably did wear like, they would have stylized themselves differently to like be distinguished. We also know that at least on like the Gulf Coast, there were kind of like, when we look at figurines, they're usually always wearing a belt. And then, and this is all over. And then in Veracruz, like they have kind of other like sports paraphernalia, like something that would go around like a yugo, which was a bigger kind of like leather thing that would go around the waist. And there was like achas, which are like protectors for your legs, and then also like something to like protect your genitals.
This one, it seems like it's shirts and skins almost. This one. Yeah.
Yeah. So they would have. Yeah. So they would have worn things to distinguish themselves. Today, like the guys are, you can see they're all just dressed in their regular clothes. But the ball, like especially if it's a tournament, the ball will have the name of the village on it. And so you'll follow you can follow the teams by following like which ball is being used, and then the team will like hold on to their special ball. So that's kind of how they distinguish themselves today, is like through the ball. But yeah, they would have worn like different things to identify the team.
Okay, next question was, did they ever have earthen courts like in the U.S. Southwest, or were they always stones?
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
Actually, the first courts we find are actually earthen. The oldest formalized court is a site called Paso de la Amada on the Pacific coast. I think Chiapas. So that one is entirely earthen, and it's not until like a couple hundred years after that we actually find marble ball courts or stone ball courts. And in fact, even like the few ball courts that have been found among the Olmec, they're also earthen too.
Interesting. Okay. Let's see. There was another one. I've read astronomical stuff built into the old ball game, usually claiming path of the sun. Doesn't it make more sense for it to be back and forth of the sun on the horizon?
Yeah, like there's like different interpretations, right? And obviously like a cosmological significance was applied to the game. I think like if you read the Popol Vuh, they see it as an entrance to the underworld, or they analogize it to the underworld. And yes, the ball moving across the court has been analogized to like the sun moving across the horizon. I don't, and some people have said that all ball courts represent this, and I don't know if I would say it holds true at all times all across society. But yes, like some games, right, like the more heavily ritualized ones, did have cosmological aspects to it too, where the game was being seen as like a metaphor for like the fights between the gods of light, the gods of dark, or whatever, or lightness and darkness, or like the hero twins versus like the gods of the underworld that they defeated in order to get their father back. So yeah, and then but also what we see too is like there's also a lot of associations with Venus, and a lot of association with like animals, but a lot of times like liminal animals. So yeah, we do see that, but again, specific time periods and specific
so it
places.
varies a lot. One last question related to ball courts, and then we're going to move on. Though we have a question related to combat sports as well. What kind of snacks do you think the Aztec and Mayan spectators would bring when they watch these tournaments? Somebody says tamales.
Well, yes, probably tamales, tortillas.
By tortillas, you mean people, right?
Games, yeah, no, real tortillas this time. But so at a lot of the ball games that I went to, especially like if it was tournament, they usually hired a woman, and she would be there like making what we call tlayudas, which are like big tortillas in Oaxaca with food. So yeah, you could expect that the host teams, right? Food would be provided, and the guests would be fed. So again, this is like why they're like also a big part of these festivals, right? Because you would feed people, and everyone would watch games, and it'd be this whole interaction. There'd be dancers, musicians, acrobats. There would also be a market going on at the same time. So it's just sort of like political, social, economic, but also fun. Like people were having fun at a lot of these games.
All right, last question related to sports, then we'll get into your research at Baeza. Do we have a date for when combat sports were first recorded being practiced here?
I can't think of but probably like we start seeing imagery like sometime in before the turn of the first millennium. First millennium.
There we go.
So we will see it like portrayed like in rock art or in carvings. There is like this like the stone at Dansu, which seems to show like people throwing stones at each other. Yeah, but we start to see it like around the turn of the first millennium, and then we also see a lot of depictions in a lot of Maya artwork throughout the classic period. You'll see it in Veracruz, but so again, combat sports also began very early too.
There we go. So do you want to move on and tell us about some of your research in Baiza? Am I pronouncing that right?
Sure, yeah. So this is kind of like a going through like my different stages of like my career.
So we can talk about the ball court here.
Yeah, so as part of my dissertation research, this is a ball court that I mapped. This is at the site of Laayasa, and you know the thing, you know this very well, Flint. That first millennium CE. Sorry, CE. So like we take pictures of archaeological.
By the way, the answer first millennium CE had to do with the combat sports, not with this site. Yeah.
Yeah, combat sports. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. It's always hard to like when you like take a picture of archaeology, especially if hasn't been reconstructed. You're like, look how cool this is, and people are like, what am I looking at? But
I can see it. So I can see the court because you have it reminds me of like a Greek theater or a racetrack where you have the two sides sloping down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so the person there, he's like walking through what would be the terminal alley on the east side, and this is actually a very small ball court. It's one of the smaller ones in the sample from the Nahapa Valley, but Laayasa is a site that basically sits on top of a ridge line, 2,000 meters above sea level. So, like where they're getting like a lot of the labor investment, even just to like build this court and everything else that's there. And what's interesting, what I found through my research, looking at the ball courts in this area, is that they all have a particular style, even though they're built sometimes centuries apart. They have like way bigger lateral mounds, and then practically like very small to non-existent terminal mounds. And they're always sunken and enclosed, which like when you compare it to the Central Valleys, like courts in the Central Valleys, they vary way much more. So it's interesting that in this frontier region, even though they vary like in their size dimensions, their style is very much the same. It's like they're all copying.
So just so people can see this, let me see if I'm reading this right from what you've said and what I see. So this is the main court right here. And there'd be a team here and a team here hitting it back and forth. These are these two side mounds, which is where that step, what did you call it? Not a skirt, was apron. That's what it was. And so here's the second one right here, coming down. And then there's these terminal mounds at the end that mark the east and the west sides of the court itself. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so, so as part of like my research, right, I mapped this ball court at Laayasa, but when we were walking around there, we found the site to be so fascinating because it's such a mystery. No one has really done any investigation there. And pretty much after it was abandoned sometime in the 1200s.
So you're a lot like Luke Caverns. You go to sites that people haven't really mapped out, and you go and you map them.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, Luke Caverns is trying to be more like you by claiming he does stuff like that, when in fact you're the one that does stuff like that.
He's copying. He's copying my style. And so what you have is just like, so where I work in Oaxaca is considered to be a frontier region. It was multilingual, multi-ethnic. These people were next to this huge trade corridor, but they were kind of doing their own thing. They were very much like connected to other regions. Like we get a lot of obsidian from Guatemala. They even copy some architectural stuff from the Maya, but they're also very connected to the Zapotecs. We see a lot of Zapotec glyphs all over there. And then also we don't have any one like regional power dominating it, right? It's like these communities they very much share like pottery styles and pottery paste. They share a lot of architectural styles, but they're also accessing their own, they have their own obsidian networks, right? So there seems to be like, I wouldn't say they all share the same identity, but yeah, so if you like go in, if you Google Naha.
This is just a map showing different obsidian sources and stone sources in the region. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no obsidian in Oaxaca, so you have to get it through trade. And so when we find obsidian and we see where it comes from, it tells us a lot about the trade networks. And what's interesting in the Haka is that each community had different types of obsidian. So they had their own kind of trade networks. So I wouldn't say that they all had a singular identity. It's clear that they are communities in communication who are sharing a lot of things, but they're all kind of like individualized, and there's no one dominating regional power. So it's like it's a frontier region. And while we do have like monumental sites, they're not very common. Most of what we find are like mid-sized towns and like small villages. But then you have Laayasa on top of a huge ridge line, 2,000 meters above, and we mapped some 80-some structures. Here's a standing wall. So this wall has been standing since the site was abandoned at the 1200s. Right? So what we find there too are standing adobe walls that are 800 years old. So this site is remarkably preserved for its time period, because nobody went and looted there until like really recently. And even then, like they don't really go there to loot too much. So it's remarkably well preserved. Yes, we are using XRF to determine obsidian sites.
Okay.
Becca, yeah. And
but
like it's also like a mystery, right? Like here's like I know we hate the word mystery in archaeology, but I think this site is actually a true mystery because it's hugely monumental. It's set deep into the mountains, right? Like when you look at it where it is on the mountains compared to where other sites are, it's very far away. Yeah. So that's there you go. You go in. A little more. That's Laayasa right there.
Right in the mountains,
Right in the mountains. Yeah, it's very difficult to get to. And we haven't even been able to map the whole thing. We always get stuck at one point. So even to map the whole site, because it's spread out along this like ridge line, and we've got about a kilometer of it, we'd have to actually spend the night to continue mapping it. And even like I said, I mapped 86 structures, and like we had to skip so much. Like there's a whole group that I know of that we had to skip. So yeah, the architecture is not necessarily like the finest, but again, they're on top of a mountain building this.
This is, by the way, a good example, and I've also worked on projects similar to this, where we don't always need to excavate to be able to do archaeology. This stuff is above the ground, available to be mapped and explored and studied. And one of the things we did is we looked for, when my very first project in Greece, we were mapping out an above ground port from the Bronze Age. And what we would do is we try to find ceramics kind of in the chinking of the stones to be able to date the construction, because we could find ceramics inside there.
And so like while like especially with these bigger stones, they kind of like they shaped them a little bit but kind of left them as is. We also have this example, I think the photo is called Laayasa blocks. Yes.
This
so
one,
as
right?
you can see we also have these very fine shaped stone blocks that and these are usually like they form the rune foundations, and then sometimes they get even thinner ones, and the style is big blocks, mortar, then these really thin bricks, and then big blocks on top, and then the thin bricks again. So this is kind of a style. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's a Mexican archaeologist who visited the site after I did, and he was like, yeah, there's something about that architecture that really draws the eye. It's not very common in this area. So while we do see some like similarity in architectural style and construction to other places, this place also has its own unique style. Yes, and they are very well shaped. And so when we see like any looting, evidence of looting, because these you can see these blocks were like taken out of place but then left there.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody made the stack.
Yeah, that would have occurred in the colonial period, up into the modern period, and the people would go up there to use those stone blocks for their own foundations. But that's pretty much the only time people have gone back was only during the colonial period. So we have a huge gap from when the site was abandoned to when people who come back to this place and it's already in ruins.
Right? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And it also, like, based on the dates of the ceramics that we were able to find on the surface, this site, what's also interesting about this site is that it's occupied at a time. So in sort of Mesoamerican chronology, you have the end of the Classic period and the beginning of the post-Classic period, where you have the collapse of Teotihuacan, you have sort of the collapse of a lot of elite institutions and a lot of these Classic period powerhouse sites and settlements. And this occurs all across Mesoamerica. And it's a process that takes, like, it starts in like Teotihuacan sometime around 650, 750, and then like occurs like up until like maybe about 1000 CE, AD. And it's a long kind of process, right? And basically it's a sort of challenge to the predominant elite institutions at the time. And then new settlements pop up. And then we've also kind of recognized a little like sort of micro phase, which we call the Classic to post-Classic transition. Sometimes it's called the terminal Classic, sometimes it's called the Epiclassic. And some sites rise up in power and then are also abandoned at the end of this period before we go into the early post-Classic. So in the Najapa region, we see that same pattern, except for Laayasa, which seems to have been occupied from the late Classic to the early post-Classic, which is again in this transitional period. So who built it?
Which is also, I guess, why maybe it looks a little different from some of the nearby sites, because it's from a different period.
Exactly. So, we don't know exactly who built it. It was first described as like a Zapotec fortress, dating to like the 1400s. But obviously, that's not it. With the ceramics prove that it's not. I mean, it's a very defensible site, and you can actually see out towards so many other regions, and it's difficult to get to, but it's not a fortress. It has a lot of what we call temple patio altar groups. It has a lot of structures. We found an administrative building. We have a lot of platforms with multiple patio room groups on it. Is clearly like we have sunken patios with like altars in the middle. Like, it's clearly like a monumental site where people are living, but it also seems to be a lot of like ceremonial stuff is going on, ritual stuff is going on. It may also be like kind of work as a sort of pilgrimage site because of the way you have to walk through the site, you know, since it's on such a narrow ridgeline. But we don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions that like who built it? We don't know. If it was built in the late Classic, then that's during a time when Zapotecs are moving into the area and are fighting with Mijes and Chontales and Chatinos. It could have been a refuge site, people fleeing these conflicts and going up into the mountains. Or it could have been just like, you know, with the collapse of other sites, you know, people built here. There's a lot, you know, so there's a lot to understand. And so my current research project, barring funding, is to do a survey of not only like around Laayasa to determine the site limits, but also to survey the surrounding like area and see like, are there other sites here? What time period do they date to? So we'll be going into the municipality of Santa Maria's Oquitlan, and we'll also be going into the municipality of San Pedro Totolapan. And what's exciting about that is that no one has done research there yet.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we'll be the first team to do survey and record the sites that are there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yes, yeah. Actually, you know that, Pablo, yeah, the one time in my life I've been stunned and baffled.
Oh, come on, you're not stunned and baffled. It's just an interesting sight that there's still a lot of questions to answer.
Yes, it's a joke. It's a joke, yeah.
Yeah, no, I realize.
Yeah. So yeah, and then also I guess I want to do this like a plug for Oaxaca archaeology, right? Because you know, we were the first. My boss Stacy was the first person to do any work in Najapa. One of my colleagues is the first person to do archaeology south of us in the region called Chichapa. I'm going into these areas. There is so much to be done in Oaxaca. We basically, like, there's a region called the Mazateca and the Chinanteca. No research has been done there. We haven't had someone do work in the Mixteca Baja since the 80s. No research has been done in another region called the Pinotepa Nacional. So a lot of our understanding of Oaxacan history is based on a very narrow data set. What's coming out of the Central Valleys and what work has been done in the Mixteca Alta. So if there are any archaeologists or archaeology students out here in the audience, please come to Oaxaca. We need more people. Every time I talk to folk, they're like, "Oh, would you like to come by my village? We have some archaeology near us." Like I've heard that so much. I would need 5 more lifetimes, and like Elon Musk money to be able to do all the archaeological research that I've been invited to by people.
Oh yeah,
so
I know that game.
So yeah, unlike Belize or the Maya region where people are fighting over a sacpe, which is a road, sorry, or like the Southwest where people are like, "That's my hill, you stay away from my hill." The field is wide open in Oaxaca, and like there's a lot of necessary work that needs to be done.
Somebody else spelled it. Okay. Somebody asked how to spell the name of the place. And Hillary conveniently answered. So, okay, we have a few questions about Baeza. I actually have a question for you first. Isn't it so satisfying to find this corner underneath all that rubble? Because there's a building there from all the rubble, and you're like, there's something here, but you need a corner or a wall face to appear so that you can map it and say something about it. And it's so lovely when that corner is there and you can find it and say something about it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then, the food is delicious. Food in Oaxaca is very delicious. So yes, come on down. There was a photo I actually wanted to send you. But again, archaeology photos don't look that great. And it just looks like 2 people standing on like rubble. But it's really cool is that when you actually go on top of that rubble, there's like room foundations there. And you realize you realize just how big this building must have been at one point. And then finding corners is also really important too, because there's so much leaf litter and pine needles. This is like a pine oak forest situation that we look for those corners all the time because there's so much buried under leaf litter,
under everything. Speaking of rubble and stuff like that, Becca asked, are they just using stacked stone or is there also a rubble core? And I'm going to make a guess based off of this photo that there is a rubble core between these 2 faces of stone.
Yeah. And actually, I didn't send it to you, but so they do use like not mortar exactly, but maybe just earth, and they do put that in between like stones and stuff.
Call that mortar or plaster. Mud plaster.
And like we haven't done any excavations into the buildings themselves or into the platforms. I'm sure that some of them contain rubble. I know that the mounds of the ball court are sort of like built of a like earth pebble matrix, and then they would have had like local stones like put on the sides. So definitely you would have you would have rubble core. Some of the stones that would have aligned the mounds are missing. But these are like most of the ball courts actually are built of like earth and pebbles, and then covered in local stones.
And you're mapping them out with a total station, I see, where you use your laser technology. My dad was the very first person to ever shoot an immovable artifact with the total station.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, it's one of those
very
things.
Cool. Yeah, so I did use a total station to map those ball courts. When we go back, we're just gonna use like a simple Trimble unit to do kind of like rough mapping. But obviously this is 2015, so the technology has changed and advanced a lot. And also just like I would never make the mistake again of lugging a total station up there.
It's not a mistake. You got to do it. You got to do it. You get those accurate. It's useful to have the accuracy so you can find stuff later. Because if you do just a Trimble with a base station, sorry, now we're talking shop. A Trimble with a base station is fine, but if you use like just a handheld Trimble without a base station, you might end up with things that have really weird orientations. I've had this issue
Yeah, where
before.
where like it's meant to be
They're
a square,
supposed
but
to be like
there's a
this, and
corner
it's
like
sort of like
that.
that. Yeah, you'll end
Yeah.
up like, and then because there's all this rubble and, like you said, leaf litter, if it isn't accurate or precise enough, I guess is the right term, you might not be able to find it later when you go
Yeah,
back.
exactly. Yeah.
So
So
there's never a mistake to lug a total station, because that's
yeah,
super
I'm
precise.
joking there. I think the next time what I would do is just like hire someone with a donkey to take it up.
There you go. There you go.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and then in this case, for this dissertation project, the accuracy was needed because the point was like ball courts are best understood like at the regional scale. You can excavate an individual ball court and understand everything about it with relation to its site. If you want to understand like the social political role of the ball game within a given region, you have to look at it at the regional scale. And excavation is very time consuming. It's expensive, and yeah, and it just it's cost prohibitive. So like so I wanted to prove that we could get a lot of information just by mapping them and yeah, I was able to map them, get all these interesting measurements, and then be able to understand and interpret not only like the ball courts themselves, but also like where they were on the landscape, what are their view sheds, just like how like what role these courts and the games would have played throughout like the different centuries among these different communities. So yes, the total stage, so yeah, it shows that you can do like these regional studies of ball courts without having to excavate and still get a lot of information.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody asked to see the ball court from above, not this one, but just in general, to give a sense of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a sense of perspective. I'm guessing the people would be kind of up here.
Yeah,
this is the apron part where it bounces in different ways. This is, and then these are the two terminal mounds on these two sides. Yeah. Okay. There we go. That's some perspective for people on the ball courts and what you picture. And you can see how that sort of becomes this if it's just abandoned and in a forest, in a sense, which is what this is. This is just a non-managed site. It's just in the forest. Nobody studies it except for you and your colleagues. Nobody visits it because it's in the middle of nowhere. So it's just somewhere that's being left for it's the ruins. That's all it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, and part of the reasons why it's also like well preserved, I think, is like the local people. Sometimes they'll go there during the day, but they won't go there at night. And they've asked us like, aren't you scared to be at the ruins at night? They're like, why? And they're like, hay fantasmas, like there's ghosts there. So I think like that's another reason why it's been just well preserved, is like it's kind of like people have a complicated relationship with the ruins, and then they avoid it, but that's good for us because so much of it then is very well preserved.
Yeah. So, okay, we have a good question from earlier about the site. Do you have enough preserved above ground to talk about the social structure there?
Yeah, actually we do. In fact, it seems like, obviously because it's on top of a ridgeline, the soil is going to be very thin. So I don't expect, for us to have to excavate down a lot. But so like I said, we have these large platforms with multiple patio room groups around them, and so this is like a large building. So we can see places where people would have lived, but also we see a lot of monumental ceremonial structure. So this wall is the remaining wall of a reticular structure attached to the ball court, and this wall at its highest point measures like 6 feet, something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks like 2 meters, something like that, 2 to 3. Yeah.
And so you can see like how it's like big stones and with some flat stones put in between. So this site is clearly, there's a lot of ceremonies going on. Like I said, we have a lot of temple, patio, altar groups, multiple. Like most sites in the area will have like 1 or 2. We counted 15.
Wow.
So this is like clearly like something really important going on. So these stairs are cool because this is a platform on top of another platform.
A platform on a platform. This is like
and then when you go up those stairs, then it's a sunken patio with an altar in the middle. So this is a really clearly like it's a lot of civic ceremonial architecture. So it seems to be like, but we don't know where the common folk would have lived. But this is clearly where the higher status people are living. But it's also very interesting too, because again, it's spread out along a ridgeline, and even sometimes at the narrowest points of the ridgeline, we still find room foundations. So
you can see these ridges up
seems
here.
To be like,
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, where'd it go?
Oh, you want me to run back to sorry.
Yeah. Or no, I was just thinking Laayasa. I was like, because he had Laayasa on the map. I was just gonna like.
Yeah, that's the modern village.
Yeah, and then if you go to Laayasa, right? Where is it? Where's that? Is that dot?
Yeah, that's the red dot here.
So you go up, and the ridge line is going to be. It runs west of the village, so I can't see. Yeah, yeah. So it's just like So as far as social structures, at least like the core of the site, this seems to be where the elites would have been living. But again, we haven't been able to map the whole thing, and we need to see like where else people were living. I have come across there's a small mound with a patio, and one of my local guides told me about how his grandfather looted the patio, found a tomb in there. Or found burials in there with goods. So that probably would have been like lower status, like a little like homestead.
Mm-hmm.
But like further down in elevation is like on the side of a hill, and it's like so it's more of a matter of finding where people are living. But we see this like a lot in hilltop sites in Oaxaca, where the elite are living like right on the top. And then as you go down in the hill, there's just like the lower status people.
It's the same thing with Greek sites where you have the Acropolis with temples and stuff at the very top, and then below that are the elites, and then below that are less elite people.
Yes, exactly.
It's very common. I mean, that height gives you vantage to see and protection and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think, do you have anything else you want to wrap up on the site? I have to get going in like about 15 minutes. So I just want to bring this to a sort of close.
Yeah. So, I guess, so hopefully we get the funding and we get to go and explore this area and not only explore the site or begin to explore the site, because we're just doing survey, right? But to begin answering questions, not only about Laayasa, but about this region of the Eastern Sierra Sur in general, because it hasn't seen a lot of research. And yet, according to the ethnohistorical documents, it played a very pivotal role during like the post-classic, because again, it's like a trade corridor, right? It's a movement of people. If you want to go from the basin of Mexico and go to Guatemala, you pass through this area. But yet no one has really studied it before. So looking at this area, we'll be able to fill in a lot of gaps in our knowledge and history, and answer like a lot of questions too about Zapotec migration and conquest from the late classic up to the arrival of the Spanish.
Yeah.
So it's really fun. It's really exciting.
Someone says, send this woman some money, which is good. But this is one of the problems with current politics, because archaeology funding is being cut left, right, and center in the U.S. and elsewhere, which makes it very difficult for people of our age to apply for funds to do our research, because we are at that period in our career where it's like we need funds to develop our career further, and yet the funding sources are drying up, and it's a real problem.
Exactly. Yeah, that is one of the issues that we're having, because as archaeologists, we actually do rely so much on funding, and if it's not private funding, then it's usually federal funding, but that's getting cut.
And private funding usually comes with strings attached, where donors have access or abilities to dictate research strategies and stuff like that. And that's its own set of problems, because donors should not be dictating heritage. It should be professionals and the locals. Okay, so we have a couple questions from my patrons. The first one is, I'd be interested to learn more about Aztec environmental engineering, if that's an area that you're able to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know about, so I don't know
You'd
as much
mentioned the
about that.
Chinampas earlier.
Yeah, so the Chinampas were already in existence before the arrival of the Mexica in the 1300s. But yes, this is a beautiful example of landscape engineering. So basically, they're in Lake Xochimilco, and what they did is they put down trees, and then like squares, and then filled that up with dirt. And then, so the trees held it together, but they would also like help, with the ecological environment, so that the soil grows and things grow, and the nutrients are constantly being replaced. So that's an excellent example. Obviously, if you're living on lakes, flooding's an issue. So the Aztecs were very good at sort of engineering that and preventing flooding. And in fact, when the Spanish arrived, it ended up killing a lot of those people with that knowledge, and they couldn't handle the flooding, and so they ended up just filling in a lot of the lakes, which is why Mexico City now has sinking problems. But
yes, there you go. That's lovely. Sinking problems instead of flooding problems.
Yeah. Like I was in a church where they warn you because the floors are tilted at like 18 degrees, and when you're walking through there, especially when it's dark, it really messes with your equilibrium.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So like I said, on these Chinampas, you can like actually produce crops 4 times a year. And yes, and they're still going and they're still producing food.
Yeah. The second question we sort of already answered, but let's think about it again. Is it true that as part of the tribute to the oppressor, the oppressed tribes had to contribute humans for sacrifice? So after losing a war, do they have to regularly contribute sacrificial victims, or is it only in combat?
It seems, so on some of the tribute lists, it does seem like they are asked to send some people, which is probably where some of that resentment comes from. It's like, we're tired of sending you our people. Plus, it's like, in my master's theory, I argued like using spatial theory, that is sort of the way of the Aztecs to sort of like control not only the village, right, through controlling the bodies. So that did occur. But it wasn't like they were like, oh, you haven't sent your 20 people today or something like that. They also were sending other products as well. But probably sometimes there was requested, we want you to send 5 people.
All right. So we need to make sure to, since somebody said send you money, we have to, Marijke right now has a fundraiser going on for this conference that she's putting together in Oaxaca, which is where you are now. You're working on setting this up right now. So please chip in to help raise a few extra bucks to put on this Dia Logos por Oaxaca. Do you want to tell a little more about it?
Yeah, so this is an international conference that we've organized as part of our scholarly collective, which we call Dia Logos in Oaxaca Archaeology, which is, our goal is to bring together Mexican, American, and Canadian researchers who work in Oaxaca and create more, collaborative dialogue. And so not only are we trying to build like bridges between groups of international scholars, we also want to build bridges between the communities who we study, right, whose ancestors we study, and the researchers themselves. And one of the issues is that a lot of conferences that take place are either in the United States, where people can't go, or they're in Oaxaca, where it can be the capital city, where it can be very hard for like rural community members to travel all the way to the capital and attend these things. So we decided we would host it in the town of Mitla, which Hillary talked about on Tuesday.
Early this week,
early this week. And Mitla is a lot closer to these other indigenous communities. So there's it's a lot easier for them to come and attend. And so it's open to the public. And some of our presenters are also either graduate students or early career scholars. We have a good representation of Americans and Mexicans. And so what we want to do is sort of help cover the cost of this conference, and also any extra monies used to turn Dia Logos in Oaxaca Archaeology into a nonprofit. Because if funding is going to be cut from archaeology, then we kind of have to maybe like create our own institution and our own path. And we want to be able to turn this into something that eventually, you know, can like reward, you know, grants to students so that they can come and study. Like that would be like a 5-year plan. But, you know, the point is to support archaeology in Oaxaca, support people who work in Oaxaca, especially early career scholars and students, and also disseminate that research to the general public.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, somebody says we need to find rich circles to fund this stuff. To be honest, I'm not sure if I agree. One of my dad's last dying wishes to me was, do not fund your archaeology from rich people. He has had bad experiences of wealthy people trying to control how the archaeological research is done. So his rule of thumb after the early part of his career where he had these bad experiences was to only go for public funds. And he was very successful at that. Of course, with funding being cut, what I hope eventually to do is to build out a larger platform to create a crowdfunding platform, because I think that's a lot safer and easier, where you don't have a select few people that can pull the strings, if you see what I mean.
Exactly, and that's what we're kind of doing with this thing too. We don't like one rich patron. We'd rather like it's supposed to be, it's community centered research, so it should be we want it to be community funded. Yeah.
That makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, then I think this was a fantastic chat. It was great to have you on for your 4th time. We'll get you on for a 5th at some point for sure.
Yeah.
And
thank you for everyone's patience during this technology issues.
And thanks everybody for the patience in dealing with that one troll who was just saying really rude things. Not the person who was saying inaccurate things. I don't mind if people say inaccurate things as long as they don't like keep repeating them. On the other hand, I do mind trolls that tell us that they claim my expert is not an expert, for example. Nope. No being rude to me or my guests or to other people in the chat in an insulting way.
Exactly.
So thank you, Dr. Stoll. Thank you, everybody, for showing up.
Everybody. Yay.
Make sure you leave a like and leave a comment after it's done, because the comments matter the most for YouTube. So come back and leave a comment. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, R.M. Brown, for the song.
Right. I feel like I'm in the club.
Yeah.
I'm in the club.
Love and archaeology to everybody.
Love and archaeology, everybody.